Good evening. This is Rob Rohrbaugh, and I'm with Global Faith Institute in Omaha, Nebraska. We are pleased to have you join us tonight. We'd like to open with a word of prayer. Dear Father, thank you for the opportunity to meet in a free country in this room tonight and online. We ask your blessings for the food that the people present here are eating, and blessing on us as we work to strive for freedom in America. We ask your blessings for our leaders, starting with our President Trump and the leaders all over the world, including President Netanyahu in Israel. We pray for all of those who are affected by the COVID-19 virus, as well as affected by the shutdown that we've endured for several months now. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Please let me introduce Dr. Mike Christian.
Thank you. Thank you. Sounds very official today, huh? Thank you. Yeah, I'm so happy to be back. Thank you for you brave people that were able to brave and come out, and glad to see all of you. And sounds very official, but I'm not that kind of person. I'm very personable. So let's do it the way that we do things. So I am so happy that we'll be out of the house arrest that we have been. One of the challenges I have is putting pants on, like real pants on, and seems like not all of them fit as they used to be. I don't know if we have the same problem or not. So, but hopefully we'll get back in shape and get back in freedom and the things that we would have been before, and even better. That's my hope and my prayers. And you know, we have people online. I welcome all of you. But you know, how many of you have been affected by this virus? Anybody know anybody that has been sick or close to it? Any of you? Good. Praise God. So all of your families are free. I just had actually one friend. I had a couple of friends in Washington State that I spoke in a couple of churches in Washington State, and unfortunately one of them has folded actually because of this. They were not very good in doing online, and they shut down for good. I have some people that I know that got the virus in Washington State, but they all of them recovered very well in different age groups actually, and all of them recovered very well, and everything is fine. I know one person in Omaha that I did business with, but I did not meet whatsoever for a month and a half before he, you know, I called him and said, "How are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I have the virus, staying home and in the basement," and you know, he sounds very good. He's enjoying his time. Actually, he joked a little bit about having time out from his kids and his wife. So that was that was his only comment that he has. So it was interesting. But you know, I actually had long conversations with different people across the country, and even in the medical field as well. And I had just a very long conversation with a very good friend of mine who's one of the top pathologists in the country, if not in the world. And we discussed in details about the virus and the response and stuff like that. And he's older. And, you know, the virus is a serious disease. It's new to the human body, and it affects people differently in a different kind of backgrounds and age group differently as well. And one of the serious issues of it, that it overwhelmed the immune system in ways that is not known. Very similar, actually, surprising to like HIV in a way, but overwhelming the system in the very beginning. And then the body responds to differently. And this is why I've never seen a debate over medications in the political field like I've seen about the chloroquine and stuff like that, which is very, very, very weird. That medicine became kind of a source of political debates. That's a new thing. But, you know, we are not surprised by everything going on, and we're going to be talking about that today. But what we discussed as well with my good doctor in California, and also another over here as well, is basically the virus is serious. It affects people, you know, in a dangerous way. Many people survive. The statistics is not as crazy as people want, as the media trying to make it. And the response was mostly political than it is medically, because it is not done according to medical, you know, procedures and recommendations and so forth, but has been driven by the political system. And I'm going to stress this again. You know, the current administration of the United States did not have any choice other than responding the way they are. You know, there was no chance that they will fight back and say, you know, we should have done things differently, or we should have done this way and that way. There was no chance he would do this, because If the administration did that today, they will count every person who's dead today, even though they do it anyway, that is Trump's fault, okay? And it's administration fault and so forth. And it is very sad to see that there is people right now today in the United States of America are celebrating that we are at the 100,000 people dead and the economy in shambles and the people are losing their job and they are touting. And I'm saying celebrating, they are not saying, hey, yeah, we have 100,000. They don't say that. But the way that they are putting the information out, it seems like they are something that they are so proud of because they feel that they have a leg on the current administration by the disaster that is going on and the death of American people and the economy and so forth. And this is very sad and I think it's treasonous in multiple ways. I don't think this is right. I believe it is not right. And it is very sad to see that people are willing for their political agenda to root for death and destruction the way that they are doing it. That's very, very, very treasonous. But when I look at things, and I'm going to discuss it in a minute, you might, today when we are discussing the topics that we're going to be talking about, you might not be surprised. You'll be still disgusted like I am, but you might not be as surprised from what they're trying to accomplish and so forth and why they are wanting to fight the way they fight. And, I want to go back to the basics and to kind of remind everybody to what we are dealing with. And we're going to bring in, we heard a lot about Obamagate and we heard about, the Russian and the Ukrainian and the impeachment and all the stuff that is going on, and then the virus afterwards. But we need to go back to the basics and to see why there is a fight in the United States the way it is right now. Why there is Obamagate? Is it Obama doesn't like Trump just because he's has red head or he's tan differently, or is he fat, or because he doesn't like his bombastic tweets? I have to make it clear that none of that stuff. So what is it that is making the problem that is going on? If we go back to the basics and remind ourselves, and I want to have a kind of discussion between us here in the room, is what do you think the biggest policies for Obama during his administration? In your opinion, what was the things that Obama was trying to accomplish during his presidency? In your opinion?
He managed to move a lot to China, moved a lot of industry
and so your answer is one of the things that he did is he moved a whole bunch of stuff, or he kind of paved the way for moving a whole bunch of stuff into China. And that's basically part of how he did that, is by putting so much regulations on businesses in the United States and tariffs and taxes and so forth. This is why, and the Obamacare, this is why they start moving to places where they can have business more freely. But in the bottom line is, he was trying to bring the United States down, a little bit. And that's what you're saying. What else do you have in mind? If you think about it, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. So that's many cases. And, if you look at what he's trying to do in the Middle East is goes back to the fundamental beliefs that he has. And this is what I'm trying to kind of highlight today. What is it that Obama was all about? What is his main policies that he was trying to do? Like, if you want to say one policy that is national security or international kind of policy, and one in the United States within a domestic one. And we're gonna discuss that and see where that's coming from, because when we understand where it's coming from, you're gonna understand the fight that is going on. So go ahead in the back. Go ahead. Yes. What one thing will come to mind as soon as transform America from within? I heard that a lot in the morning as well when I asked him those questions. Transforming America from within. And this is what when you talk about transformation, that he said, I'm going to transform America from within. That's kind of an overarching thing, and it's kind of a very flexible statement, because you can say, I'm going to be transforming something, and he meant to transform it into the right direction. He might say, I'm transforming America to be the great more than it ever been, or transforming America to so forth, But his transformation was, when you see the fruit of his transformation, you see that he brought America down on its knees, metaphorically and, reality. At some point in time, he bowed down to the king of Saudi Arabia and kissed his hand. Is that this is a transformation of leadership of America, because all of a sudden you have the president of the United States of America. If he says, I'm not bowing down, but he says, I am bound to their traditions, we are not a country that bow down to other traditions and bowing down and kissing hands of other kings and so forth. So that was a transformation itself. But at its core, you know, when he said, I'm transforming America from within, or transforming America, you know, he was talking about bringing America down. And how I make that assertion? Because of the fruit of his work. After 8 years, we are way less of a nation than we were before he became in. Even though he came in at a time when, you know, economy was bad, you know, and we are in the middle of two wars and so forth. But he managed to take the country that was already in a bad shape, even to make it worse, right? So go ahead.
He's not Islam, is he?
He's not a Muslim, that's what you're saying? Well, this is one of the things that, you know, that many people ask, you know, whether he's a Muslim or not. Really, I really don't care about his religion and what he's doing in his home. That's not the issue that I deal with or I care about. You know, that's, you know, because of, you know, espousing American values, I'm not going to be able to talk about his religion, but I'm going to talk about his ideology. This is a guy who has a Muslim dad. He has an ironically very, you know, interesting Muslim name himself. And I talked multiple times about Barack Obama, his first name. The name Barack itself is coming from the winged horse that Muhammad rode from Mecca to Jerusalem, supposedly. So he has a very ironic and very telling Muslim name. But this is not the issue. The issue is he's born to a Muslim dad. He was raised in a Muslim country, and he was raised by a stepfather that is a Muslim. And why am I highlighting this? Because when I saw him running for election, even before his first term, and I start listening to what he has to say and some of the statement he's making, and I was shocked, to be honest with you, because I'm a person that grew up in a Muslim country. Most of my youth, most of my life actually, still lived in a Muslim country, and I grew as a Muslim myself. Now I'm a follower of Christ, and I will be until the day I die. But I learned and I heard and I echoed and I said myself some of the statements that was false in its nature. Basically, in any Muslim country, if you go around, you know, Muslim countries are not living the best days. Okay, they are under dictatorship. They under monarchs or fake presidents and so forth. Their economy is in shambles. Most of the Muslim countries, even the wealthy ones, even Saudi Arabia, still people are suffering and struggling. Some people have the money, the others. There is no kind of fair share for anything, fair share in opportunities, not fair share of socialism, kind of. So Muslim countries are struggling big time, and there is bloodshed and there is killings and all that kind of stuff. Why I'm saying this? Because if you ask any Muslim on the streets, anywhere, in homes and outside and stuff like that, they would always blame the United States for their misery. Dictatorship, you know why we have dictators in the Middle East, we'd say, and I used to be one of those, because of America and how horrific country it is. It is America that takes those dictators and install them into power and continue feeding them to devour and to distress their nations. So we have this mess of a political system because of the United States. What about your economy? Well, the United States is stealing our resources and wants to suppress us more, so you will never rise and never be good. If you take the United States out, you know, most of Muslims says, we will be awesome. We will be living in golden age and so forth. All of those are false statements. I used to echo some of them. I used to believe some of them because I grew up entrenched in Islam, and I was, you know, preaching Islam and preaching, you know, the things that was going around. So I understand that, I believed it, but now when I see the light, I see how false and unbelievable, misleading statements they are. When I see Obama comes into his pre-election and then his election and during his presidency, and I see him echoing some of that stuff about the United States is not fair. He talks about America that is oppressing other nations and so forth, and he wants to bring it down. If you listen to his speech in Chicago with his wife, standing up in the crowd, it was just a kind of a rally outside in Chicago that was announcing, and you will talk about, and you will hear him talking about how he needs to bring America down, so to be in the same level like other nations, so they can everybody competing on the same level. This is an ideology he has. So, you know, his policies in the Middle East is not echoing from whether he's a Muslim or not, but his belief and his you know, DNA of believing what the Muslim countries are repeating, and his Islamist ideology in his mind and his heart, that he wants to make a fair share for the Muslim countries, that they will that he will free them from the oppression of the United States so they can rise and so forth. Make sense? Any more? You know, anything about Obama that
comes from their leaders? That's just, that is so prevalent in the Muslim nations that all people believe that?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about the Muslim nations. I'm talking about Obama right now because we want to talk about the stuff. So let's focus on Obama. And we can talk about why they're doing what they're doing, but let's focus on Obama. So what are the accomplishments or the main policies or the ideologies in your mind that you know about Obama? Benny, go ahead, Larry.
Well, he seems to be well connected with the radicals of the past.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Specifically the bill from the 70s.
Yes. And Loniski and others and stuff like that, yes? Yes. Yes. So, do you have something?
Well, I just, you know, everybody to one degree or another knows really what this guy's background is. You know, his mother, if you ever look at anything I've ever looked at where he's been directly asked if he was a Christian.
Yeah.
You know, well, like he answered a lot of things, he went around in circles, and his kind of bad answer was, well, my mother was a Christian.
Yeah.
I was raised by my mother, and she was a Christian.
Yeah.
Tells you nothing. But when you look at her and her people she associated with, his mentor with that Marshall Davis, who was a Marxist communist.
Yes.
And, you know, he go to church for how many years, 20 plus years with Reverend Wright, which was Mr. Hate America. You know,
So,
for my father, his father was a Marxist communist.
yes.
You know, so what's this guy gonna be? You know, this is his whole life.
That's the point I was trying to make. It is whole life that he was, in many ways, supporting of the Islamist and sympathizer with them and what the agenda of the Islamist movement is, whether it is his religion or not. Even that thing that you said he was raised by a Christian mother, that's a lie, because his mother was living in Indonesia, which is a Muslim nation, and he did not tell you, oh, and my mother used to drag me out of my home, my Muslim dad, and take us to church in Indonesia. He didn't say that. That's not happened. It never happened. And so he was not raised by a practicing Christian mother. I don't know what was the religion, but it's very, very clear that she was a socialist as well. So if you look at his core, Obama's core, you look at two things that very clear, and they kind of illustrated themselves in his speeches, in his character, in whatever he says. And in a way, he's idealistic. He thinks that he's going to bring social justice and fairness into the game. And what is the fairness that he thinks about? It's two things that you can see them very clearly. Islamist agenda, where he wants to help Muslim nations in any way. So he will help them by eliminating the things that they thought that is destroying them for years. Basically, he says that there is dictators in the Middle East, that they need to be removed, that we have to give them fair share in multiple things, and we have to give them opportunities in multiple ways so they can rise again. He always says, terrorist because you don't have enough money. What if Osama bin Laden has money more than God? Well, no, that's a different case. What about the guy in New York? Oh, different case. It's always that terrorism is happening because of lack of money, and the dictators are bad, and Muslim countries is bad. So first one, he's a very he's sympathizing a lot with the Islamic agenda. Would you agree with that? Right? And his enemy in the Middle East are the dictators, okay, or the leaders of the Middle East, because he thinks that they are the reason for the problems that's going on and so forth. The second thing is, you know, some people will say, was he a communist or a socialist or a radical? I would say he's a socialist at his core. And you can see that from most of his policies, and that is reflected into his agenda and his policies. One thing is, he wants to bring the United States down. Why? Because he thinks, and he said that multiple times, even in that speech in Chicago, that the United States became very special country and, and gained its status as one of an exceptional nation because it is devoured other nations and stepped on other nations. And in his opinion, he will bring justice to this. So he will level the ground. He says, I love the United States. I don't hate it. I'm just going to bring it down to the level of other nations. So it's going to be a fair game, everybody competing on a fair way. And in his way of doing this, he will bring the United States down. This is why he started putting regulations and so forth, so business can run other countries. Every policy he's done is by bringing the United States down, and in his opinion, into the leveling it with other nations and so forth. And that's wrong. It's not true. It's fake. It is all bunch of false narrative. The other thing is he helped Muslim nations overthrow their dictators with what was called the Arab Spring. You remember that stuff, right? And many people say it's conspiracy. Actually, I brought in today an article that was published in 2011. And you know where it was published? It was published in New York Times, talking about Obama's initiative where he wants to, change regimes in the Middle East and help with the uprising and predicting the uprising and so forth. And it was coming out of the White House, and the New York Times published that. That's back in the day when New York Times was, it's still not that fair of a newspaper anyway, but they are publishing that stuff. So it's not a conspiracy that he was trying to change regimes in the Middle East and help the uprising and so forth. Why? Because he thought this is going to be helping the Muslim countries to rise and to be the Islamists that they are, and then Islam will live its golden years again. Make sense? Okay? So if we understand that about Obama, when you look about his Christian stuff, do you think Christianity fits in with those kind of, socialist and pro-Islamist? It doesn't. It's an enemy of that, right? What about Judaism? What about, real state of Israel and so forth? Will it fit with that? It does not, right? Israel does not fit with his agenda. Israel is the opposite of what he's trying to accomplish. He's trying to help Islamists and socialists. Israel is a free nation rising against all Islamic nations over there and exposing their weaknesses and their problems and their terroristic narrative. So this is why he was not very supportive of Christianity, but not very supportive of Netanyahu and the people who are espousing Israel or Zionists and so forth. And this is why this is coming from, okay? So when you look at Trump, he comes into office and he's talking about American greatness. How does that fit with Obama? What do you think he will feel about that?
Not good.
Right? So all of a sudden, he's going exactly the opposite of what he believes, right? What about Trump? What is the first trip that Trump did when he took office? The first time he got on Air Force One and left that Trump plane, and he went internationally. Do you remember where he went first time? He went to Saudi Arabia and he went to Israel, those two countries. And what did he do in Saudi Arabia? He collected 52 leaders that Obama does not like. He thinks all of them are dictators. Put them in one room, and guess what he told them? He told them Islam is a terroristic religion, and we need to change that. How do you feel? How do you think Obama is going to feel about this? Right? So now you can understand why we have an Obama gate, we have a Russian and stuff like that. It is not about golf. It's not about fat. It's not about color of skin and how he's standing orange and all that kind of stuff. It's about an extreme two different ideologies and a vision for America and for the world. Completely different. And it's not a simple thing. It is very, very deep-seated. Obama worked for 8 years, and he was hoping for another 8 years and more, where he was going to accomplish what he thought is the right thing to do, bringing America down to the same level of other nations, open borders, and helping Islamists rise. And if you look at the two main policies that he did, if you look at Obamacare and the Arab Spring, those are the major things that Obama did. Both of them, Trump is leveling, running over, and changing everything about it. You got what I'm talking about over here? So the problem that is happening in America is deep-seated ideology and a vision for America. You're following what I'm saying, right? So if we go with knowing all of that stuff as a background of our understanding today, let's move forward to the three topics I want to talk about. I want to talk about Israel. I want to talk about the coronavirus and the response to it and what's happening. And I'm blessed to be part of that initiative that is going on to restart America. And I want to talk about Mike Flynn, because that is the core of the things that's going on. Okay, so I talked a lot about the deal of the century in Israel before. I don't know, some of you remember talking about that stuff? You do? Okay. How many of you remember what I was talking about? Thank you. You're awesome, all of you. Great. I hope the people online as well understand what the deal of the century is, and maybe we can talk about it again sometime soon. I think we should actually next month, and here is why. So the deal of the century that I talked about before has two parts to it. Part from Israel and part from Arab nations. See, Obama was not a pro-Israel whatsoever. You agree with that or not? Well, in the last visit of Netanyahu, he did not even meet with Netanyahu the last time that he was in town when Obama was president. And he has to go to the Congress and to speak over there, and he did not even allow him in the White House. Do you remember that stuff or not? Okay, and it was part of the Iran deal, and it was part of many things. He was not a pro-Israel whatsoever. Why? Because you have to understand, he's a Islamist sympathizer and also a socialist. And Israel does not fit in those two things, does it? Okay, well, and Trump comes in, and the first time he goes into Saudi Arabia, and he starts forming a coalition with Muslim nations to move the Arab-Israeli conflict in a completely different direction, which is 100% pro-Israel. You want me to repeat that? Trump, as soon as he took office, formed a coalition and a task force with his son-in-law and others with his administration to move forward and end the Arab-Israeli conflict in a way that is more pro-Israel than ever before in any other administration in the history of the United States of America. You're following with that statement I made, right? That is completely against the core of Obama and the left and the Islamists all together. It gets them crazy. You got what I'm saying? Okay? There is two parts of the deal of the century. One of it is Israel will take control of all the land that was able to be capturing in 1967. Without going into history, in 1967, Israel was able to accomplish many of the things that has been promised to them, which is taking over Jerusalem and the Golan Heights and parts of the West Bank, and to establish a bigger land of Israel and more concise land and so forth. And since 1967, the United Nations came into the place, and also United States leaders came into place and tried to stop Israel from enjoying the promise that God promised them, and also by their victory that they accomplished in 1967. Trump said, enough of this. What you gained in 1967, it should and must, and it is yours. I'm going to help you have full sovereignty over that. Obama doesn't like this. The left doesn't like this. And there is left within Israel doesn't like this as well. He said, you gained Jerusalem in 1967. It is yours. You gained Golan Heights in 1967. It is yours. You gained lots of land in the West Bank. It is yours. All of that. And this is what the deal of the century. So basically, in the deal of the century, the first part of it is the United States acknowledging what Israel has accomplished in 1967 and giving them the land that they gained in 1967, full sovereignty over it. Okay? The left hates that. Islamists hate that. You got that point? Okay? What is the other part of the deal of the century? Well, normally, Arab nations will hate that. They'll say to America, no, we're not going to do this. For the first time, we have a United States president that is start working with the powerhouses of the Middle East, like Egypt and Saudi Arabia and other nations, so they can back him up in his plan. Well, in the Muslim world, sometimes you have to do things discreetly. So when the announcements took place and so forth, the Arab nations did not come up clearly and says, we are in 100% backing Trump. They kind of put some kind of fake statements that we're against it, but they never put the pressure or the objection like they used to do. So the first part of the deal of the century is from the United States and Israel. The second part is from Arab nations. We did not see the part of the Arab nations whatsoever. I'm going to explain to you why. You're following me, or you're losing you? You're following? Okay. So Netanyahu was fighting hard to be able to continue forming the government for quite some time. You remember I was here the first time that he was out in Europe, and all of a sudden he was sacked out of government and he has to call for re-election. And since then he has to go 3 times for elections and failed every time to form a government because the left in Israel is opposing him and fighting him and do not want to see that deal of the century or Trump agenda succeed. Some of you will say, there is Israel, people in Israel that are against that. You know, have you ever encountered anybody in the United States who is not 100% supporting the United States? You're laughing, right? But you're not expecting that to happen in Israel, right? Pelosi, yeah. When Rob was saying we pray for our leaders, I remember Pelosi praying for our leaders, and I want to pray for her too, the same way she prays for Trump. Well, how about that, right? So next time instead you're praying for him, I'll pray for you the same way. How's that? You know, but I loved her fridge and her ice cream in it, you know, in her current tea. Did you see that? Like thousands of dollars of fridge and amazing ice cream. Well, let's go back to that thing that matters, right? So there is people within Israel that are actually self-loathing as well, and they hate the promises. And I see it this way, actually. Faith is a very big part of who I am. And I think people become that kind of self-loathing and mistrusting and clinging onto the word when they do not have faith or believe in the promises of God or what God is telling us to do. I see that very clear. Even within the United States, you know, it is just kind of ironic that goes hand in hand. And within the state of Israel, there is people who do not look at the story of Moses, even though they are Jews, as a real story. They say that it's fake story, that's not true and stuff like that. So, and it's ironically that you find those kind of Jewish people as well who have an Israeli passport. They are enjoying the freedom and the opportunities that Israel has to give them, but they want more. And they don't see that getting more prosperity comes from God, but comes from their own agenda and trying to appease to others and to try to work deals on their own. You're following what I'm saying? Right? So this is the same kind of people over there in Israel as well, the very far left who hates Netanyahu and the agenda of Trump and so forth, are self-loathing as well and don't want to see that to happen. And they stop Netanyahu from winning or forming the government for over a year right now and 3 elections later, okay? Here is the interesting thing. Netanyahu is a very interesting politician. He's a very astute one. He doesn't give up, you know. The more I look at his, you know, the way of dealing things is very interesting. So he took advantage of the coronavirus and what's going on by the lockdown in Israel and so forth. And he started to kind of soften his narrative about the deal of the century. And he succeeded to form the government and succeeded to finally solidify his success and his victory and form the government. Even went ahead and said, I don't know if I'm going to move with the deal of the century and so forth. And guess what? They let him, you know, form the government. As soon as he did this, the other side came right immediately. And he says, you know what? I fooled you. He didn't say that, but in a way he did. He said, the deal of the century is moving forward. July 1st is the day that I am going to announce taking over the land that has been given to us or we have been able to gain in 1967. And we're going to move with the deal of the century. And if anybody has a problem, you know, just take a hike in a way. And he ordered the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, to start ramping up their training and their you know, being readiness for any kind of confrontation with, you know, any kind of terrorist whatsoever. And he's moving forward with July 1st, no matter what. And he said, that day is not going to change. I said before it's not going to happen and stuff like that. Well, that's it. I'm moving on with July 1st. And Mike Pence went over there in a way to do a couple of things. Number one, it is kind of a symbolic congratulations for Netanyahu, and also to support the deal of the century and so forth. Where is the Arab countries in all of this? Well, the Arab countries, you know, this is the second part. This is not going to happen without a real confrontation. You know, if the Arab nations is not going to form a force and a fight Israel, then things will be okay. But if they did, there is a problem. Well, the Arab nations has been working with Trump administration under the table discreetly for quite some time during all of that stuff. So the announcement does not include forward with the Arab nations, even though you can see some kind of softening and preparing their nations for what is to come. And why I'm saying this, because in America, people are used to see things straightforward. They have to see things on the paper. You know, if there is a deal, all the parts of the deal has to be in. I would say most of Americans that way. You would agree, right? Some people still in America don't do things that way as well, and and we look down at them. In the Middle East, it's kind of different a little bit, because people over there has to find a way to go around all the the problems that they can face and go under the table and so forth. And I don't see any difference in this. Arab nations, Saudi Arabia and Egypt and so forth, the powerhouses, if they came from the very beginning and says we are supporting the deal of the century, they would look as traitors, and they're going to see uprising in those nations, right? So they are doing it differently. What they are trying to do or accomplish is, as soon as July 1st passes, there is lots of Palestinians and lots of people in in those territories will be oppressed. The Arab nations will come in as a rescue forces, even though it is the same agenda, everything is agreed on, but they're going to come as a rescue for the Palestinians instead of being in cahoots with Trump and Israel. You know what I'm saying? And the end result is the same. So instead of showing that they are with the United States and Israel, they will show that they are supporting and helping the Israelis, helping the Palestinians after the deal of the century has been implemented. Make sense? It's mind twisting for many of you, honest people. That's good. I'm happy that you guys, but this is the way it is. And I can take some questions about that.
Somehow diffuse conflict, Mark?
Yes, it is intended. So why the Arab nations are doing it that way? Imagine if, put yourself in the president of Egypt, for example, who is going to promise some land within his country and money and other things so he can help this deal of the century. If Sisi comes out and says, I support Trump, I support the state of Israel, and I'm going to give land, part of my country, to the Palestinians. This is a three whammy that will kick him out. He will be killed for it. Why? Number one is, you are a traitor. You are supporting Trump. You are a traitor supporting Israel. You are giving land, our sovereign land, to the Palestinians. So they're going to hate all of that. But if he did all of this without saying anything, and then as soon as Palestinians has been that they have to leave the West Bank and they have to find a new place and stuff like that, and he comes in as a rescue and says, I'm going to give you some part of my land as a solidarity with my Arab and Muslim friends because I have to help you out. Well, the end result is the same. He gave land, he supported Israel, he supported Trump, but discreetly. Make sense?
Is that because they hate us?
Who?
I mean, because Palestinians hate.
Well, there is lots of people who hate the United States. Yeah. It's not about love and hate right now. It's about deals. It's about benefits. Okay, Saudi Arabia is not working with the United States because they love Trump. Not, but the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is willing to do whatever it takes so can have Trump on his side. Why? Because they look at Trump as a strong man who's running a strong economy and a strong country, that he is a man that is not going to bend backwards. He's not a man that is going to be compromising and all of that stuff. And he needs, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia needs Trump. You know, I said that earlier, you know, we have Obama kissing the hand of the King of Saudi Arabia at some point in time, right? Today, we have this Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia will do whatever it takes, even to kiss the feet of Trump so he can get whatever he wants to do, okay? Why? Because he's going to benefit from that relationship. It is not in believing in of ideology. It is not anything. He needs the United States. So Trump is making a deal with somebody. What do you want from me? If you're going to give it to me, I'll give it to you. It is dangerous. It is not easy. You're dealing with somebody is like a, you know, somebody who's, you know, he will flip at any minute if he's not going to get what he has. So it is a very tricky relationship, but it has to be done.
And that's why you said we can't trust Saudi Arabia.
Never, I will never do.
Never. Yeah. Because they're going to flip whatever way benefits.
Yes, it is somebody, because the ideology and the beliefs is completely opposite of what we do. They will run their, they can kill somebody with no, you know, the way they are actually trying to change their country, you know, they're not trying to say, you know, we are wrong and stuff like that. They are actually arrest imams. You know, I don't know if I agree with this or not, but they arrest imams on religious leaders who support the Islamic agenda and put them in jail and sometimes kill them. This is the way I will not deal with things. I don't like to see bloodshed. I would love to see the King of Saudi Arabia trying to bring things in a more, you know, proper way and says we have to change our mind and Islam is wrong. He is not going to do that. He's doing it with bloodshed. You know what I'm saying? So. Any questions about that? Do you have any questions, Rob, so far?
Yes, sir. We have a few. Here. Hopefully everybody can help hear me in the audience.
Do you have any?
Yes, we have several. Some of them have to do with what you've been talking about with Obama and Muslims. For instance, wasn't Obama largely responsible for getting the so-called Arab Spring underway?
Absolutely. This is why I said today, even the New York Times, I said it multiple times, but I wanted to get the source from
Times as somebody that's not going to be a conspiracy anymore.
Start over, because when he stops the AirPods, your mic is not. So
Okay.
go again.
So the question is, am I saying that the Arab Spring is, Obama was helping in that? Absolutely. And I said, this is a source coming out of the White House and the New York Times at that time when he was president in 2011, that actually details what Obama was trying to accomplish in the Arab Spring. Yes. Do you have any more questions?
Lots of them. This is a good one from Nebraska. What is your response?
That's the first why they're all here. That's okay.
Well, we can ask him why he wasn't in Lincoln this noon. What is your response to the perception of some people that the deal of the century may be a predecessor to a false peace, according to some interpretations of biblical prophecy, and the initiation of the reign of the Antichrist?
Can you take that?
Yeah, put back. Can you put it back in the case so I can answer? I can get my mic back. That is a great question. The question is, do you think the deal of the century is an antichrist, agenda that is supposed to, right? Is that, in prophecies of the Bible bringing false peace?
Right. What is your response to the perception of some people that the deal of the century may be a predecessor to a false peace, according to some interpretations of biblical prophecy, and the initiation of the reign of Antichrist?
So did you get the question? Okay. The interesting part is when I look at the biblical prophecies and everything, I'm not claiming to be a scholar whatsoever, but it seems like God's plan is not going to be stopped by anything what you're trying to do or not to do. Don't you think? God's plan is going to move forward no matter what. And when you look at Jesus and Judas and others, there was no stopping of God's plan. So I don't think my support for the deal of the century or opposition of it will change the facts that God is in control. He's going to move forward with his plans, whether Trump in office, Obama in office, Biden in office, or even Nancy Pelosi doing anything. It's not going to change. So what I'm trying to over here to say, I'm stating facts. I don't know when is the Antichrist is going to come. I don't know any of that stuff. Prophecies are prophecies. They're left for interpretation. What we need to do, what Jesus told us to do. We live every day and we fight every day for our faith. We make disciples of all nations. We do it as if we are living forever. But we always prepare as if we're going to die the next second. So what I'm seeing over there in the Middle East is something promising. It is all of a sudden is going to stop the bloodshed. Some people say this is a very pro-Israel kind of a plan. Here is the thing. If we stop the fight in Israel, don't you think by default, less Palestinian bloodshed will take place or not? Because there is no war anymore, right? Whether it is just for them or not, there is no more war anymore. There is less terroristic attacks, less bloodshed, and so forth. So in a way, I see it is actually a pro-Palestinian in a very weird way, but it is. Because I don't want to see bloodshed. I don't want to see kids growing up on hate and living their life waiting for them to be martyred as, in a jihadi or in a terrorist attack. I want them to live their life and have the best opportunities and so forth. So I don't really know what this has to fit in with the prophecies. I will leave it to the biblical scholars. But today, I see it fits with peace that I love to see, prosperity that I would love to see, Israel that is a better nation, a more sovereign nation, America that is stronger, and Muslim nations that have been changing. Even if it's a fake change, even if the Muslim nations are doing a fake change because of the leadership, make no mistake that Muslims on the ground, when they see things changing like they are, they start doubting their own religion and start having something in their heart to ask about whether this imam that is in jail right now was right or wrong. Another thing is, many of the imams that was propagating the message is not anymore in place to do that. There is more Muslims have more open mind to other ideas that will open them to maybe learn something new and maybe follow the true God. This is my hope. So I see this as a positive in multiple ways. Is that going to usher in the Antichrist? There is nothing we can do to stop him because this is God's plan and he's going to do it anyway. I like the book, Paul.
I just don't see how the Islamists will give up. Yes, Muslims don't realize the difference. A lot of them do not know. Muslims do not know the difference between the Islamic religion and politics versus the one true God. So the Islamists, most of them are not going to give up. They're not going to learn that difference. They're going to keep stirring the pot all over.
Okay, so your question is, you agree what I've said, but you disagree that you think Islamists are changing. I never said that they're going to change. Islamists will stay Islamist, okay? But less of the message of Islamist means less people in the youth and the younger generation will be introduced to the message of Islamist. You know, a message has to be addressed and communicated. Less communicators on the stage, less people getting the message. This is one thing. The only thing that will change hearts and minds is following what Jesus told us. Go make disciples of all nations. Their hearts and minds is not going to change by anything, but by us doing our job. This is my book is about. This is about, you know, ministries out there are doing and so forth. So all my hope is a little bit of less grip of power in the Middle East from the leaders and the imams and so forth, that might open the door for a little bit of a better message that they will get in. How much it will resonate, I don't know. How much a change will happen, I don't know. What I am hoping for with the deal of the century is more peace. It is not the peace that is going to be ultimate peace, because the ultimate peace comes only with the biblical prophecies through God, but some sort of less bloodshed. Should we have fought in World War II and take out Hitler? Is that we should let him continue fighting? No, we did what we were supposed to do at the time. It was the right decision. Some people at that time thought that Hitler is the Antichrist, Stalin is the Antichrist, other people Antichrist. We don't know until we know, and God's plan is going to move forward no matter what.
Are you saying, I let's go back to Mormonism. Are you saying that this allows some of the younger people to maybe start to doubt?
Yes. Yes, in the Muslim country, and this is happening. You have millions of people in Egypt and in the Muslim world, in Saudi Arabia even, that start doubting and questioning what is going on and what they really believe or not. Because they start having people telling them terrorism is bad. Well, they grow up and says, you know, the prayers, you know, like the Ramadan ends, and there is a big prayer that gathers people together to pray for, you know, for the celebration of the big festivities of the Eid. The statements or what they recite is about victory and how Allah is providing them victory and how Allah was able to kill all the enemies and help by their hand and so forth. So all of a sudden people questioning, and I've seen that. That was very interesting. There was repetitive prayers for celebration before. You know, it was like Merry Christmas. And all of a sudden people realized what Christmas means. Okay, right? You know, people will say over here Merry Christmas without even thinking about what Christmas means. It is Christ Mass, right? People say that without understanding, other than they're going to get a new Xbox or something, right? All of a sudden, the Muslim countries, nations right today, when they were going through the prayers, there is some questioning. I've never seen that before. I just witnessed that lately. They're asking, why are we saying those actually, it's very similar to Merry Christmas, you know, says Allah Akbar, and, you know, thanks Allah for fighting, you know, helping us fighting our enemies and victory and so forth. And all of a sudden, it doesn't go with, let us look at terrorism as something from Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, and it's not real Islam. Well, if it's not real Islam, why are we chanting victory and killing enemies and so forth? Start questioning like stuff like this, okay? I can take one more question and then can move forward. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask a question about Michael Flynn.
I will. I'll go to Michael Flynn right now.
Are you ready to? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A couple, 3 years ago, I heard you talk about Michael Flynn and said that you had some reservations about it.
Yes, I'm going to share some stuff today.
Would you please?
Okay, sounds good. So some people might not like me after I talk about that. I don't know if they liked me before, but, you know, I'm going to go into a very tricky kind of issue, okay? And I want to make a statement first, okay? Not every victim is a hero. Would you agree with that? So there are some victims who happen to be victims, and yes, they have been wronged, but they are not the heroes. Is that right? I'm going to tell you why I'm saying this. Mike Flynn, I get to meet with him, and we start having a conversation. That was July in 2016. And that was a very kind of interesting time in his life and also in mine. And we had this conversation, and then very quickly, we kind of went on the side, and we had a conversation that went in for a little bit over than almost 2 hours, okay? And we talked about a magnitude of things. And I didn't know much about Mike Flynn at that time, other than, you know, before I met him, before we talked, you know, I get to know about him as a hero, as doing things and so forth. But then on our conversation, it was very clear what we are going through. And I get even to talk to his son afterwards and so forth. And we had a very strong conversation. I'm not going to share every detail of that, but I'm going to give you the essence of what's going on, okay? And background of Mike Flynn, you know, and goes back to Obama as well, and so forth. Mike Flynn has a very interesting career. He is American hero, served his country in amazing ways, but he's not a perfect man. You know, all of you are perfect, but I'm not perfect either, so I can resonate with that, but he's not a very perfect man. You know, he has his mistakes and so forth, and he had some problems throughout his, you know, a couple of problems in his career. One of the things is, he was the head of the intelligence of the military during the Arab Spring and afterwards, okay? And one of the things that he was fired for and actually being installed afterwards, are you following me? Are you following? Okay. When he was working for Obama administration and the Benghazi took place, do you remember the incidents of Benghazi and so forth? Okay. And when the Benghazi incident took place, Mike Flynn did the ultimate mistake by pointing the obvious, which is at that time is that Iran is somehow involved in the Benghazi attacks and so forth. And that did not sit well with Obama, okay, whatsoever. And Tapper at that time as well. And they fired him for objecting some of Obama. Before that, he was fine with everything Obama's doing in Al-Qaeda, in Pakistan, in Iraq, and he was involved in many of that stuff. As soon as he started talking about Iran and talking about some of the agendas that's going on and opposing one thing, Obama didn't like it and fired him immediately, okay? But the firing did not go through 100%. Very quickly, they kind of give him an honorary you know, dismissal from his service and his position as the head of the Defense National Agency, and give him some kind of a ceremony that was kind of a symbolic, and let him leave with integrity and other things, and got all the benefits and so forth. Because he was fired by Obama, or pseudo fired by Obama, very quickly he figured out that he can actually benefit more from the conservatives and the anti-Obama stuff. And he started, you know, working with that stuff a little bit, okay? You know, I'm not blaming him. This is how it is. And he started talking about how heroic he was and stuff like that. And some stuff is heroic, some stuff is not. At some point in time in his career, he actually fed information to Haqqani movement, which is a movement in Pakistan that he was not supposed to do. They are enemies of the United States. He gave them some information over there, which was not supposed to happen, but he did, and he was forgiven for it and continued with his career and so forth. So he just have a very weird, he's a very intelligent man, very strong in what he believes in, and he's trying to do things. But here is the biggest problem that took place. After he left, he started working with the conservatives a little bit more, okay? And then he also was he thought for himself, and this is what we talked about, that his political career and his military career is over for good. He accomplished a lot, reached the highest levels, and he's done. And now he wants to go into business and try to see how he's going to continue his life. He's young, relatively young, healthy. He's want to continue making money and so forth. And he reached out to Giuliani, if you know Giuliani, Mayor Giuliani. And Giuliani has a business of, being a consultant, intelligent consultants and others with other nations. Some of them are good, with America, some others are not. But Mike Flynn started working for that, and then he formed his own business for kind of intelligent consultancy to other nations. And I didn't have a problem whatsoever in my talk with him about him consulting with the Russians, because I don't believe that the Russians are manipulating the United States whatsoever. But I had a problem with his work with the Turkish government, Erdogan, because Erdogan is a Muslim Brotherhood operative. I had a problem with him working with Qatar, because Qatar is a big fundraisers for the Muslim Brotherhood and harboring them and so forth. I had a problem with other nations that he was working with, and I asked him specifically about a lady, her name is Moza, which is the mother of the Prince of Qatar, and he knows her personally and so forth. Basically, what he was trying to do is to start his own enterprise and his own business, and to work outside of politics and outside of anything related to government and so forth. And he has the right to do that. He was not doing anything nefarious. I'm not saying that he was doing anything against the United States of government or a traitor or whatsoever. Okay, you're following what I'm saying? You don't like me anymore? Because he's a hero, supposedly? Well, he's doing business. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I have a problem with some of the affiliation, but this is mine. Everybody has his own decisions and so forth. Make sense? And he's not giving them United States, secrets. He is working with them to give them his, expertise in intelligence and cybersecurity and all that kind of stuff to other nations and so forth. Okay.
So you had a problem because
I don't like Qatar and Moza, and I don't like Erdogan.
But he was doing for his own benefit.
Yeah, he's running his own business outside of government whatsoever. Okay. And here is the thing that happened. Trump was interviewed in one of the conservative radio stations that is supposedly conservative, but they are pro-Bush or old Republican kind of stuff. Do you remember the name? I'm very bad at saying the name. You can, Huey.
Hugh Hewitt.
Yeah, that name, Huey Hewitt, whatever that name is, okay? He had an interviewed Trump, and he was trying to frame Trump as illiterate about the Middle East and not understanding anything and so forth. I don't know if you remember that or not, when he asked him about different terrorist organizations and what's happening in Yemen, what's happening in Iran and so forth. And then, Trump stumbled a little bit because he didn't know all the names, and Trump did not flinch, and he said, I don't know them right now, but I will know them later. And, when I become a president, they start making fun of him that he's going to be training on the job and so forth. Do you remember any of that stuff? You do? Awesome. Okay. So as soon as that happened at this interview, Trump reached out to his friend, Giuliani, to ask him for, how can we get out of this banana stuff? And he told him, I have the right guy for you. I have Mike Flynn. He knows everything in the Middle East. He worked in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and every country, if you want information, and he's not wrong. Mike Flynn is very well versed. He knows his stuff. He's a very smart man. He's very good in all that stuff. So he said, okay, we're going to get him into working for you as a national advisor. I wish he called me, but he didn't. So, I don't know as much as Flynn does, but anyway. Yeah. So he started working with Trump. Here is the problem. He has lots of business relationship that is already in place with the Qataris and the Turkish and the Russians and so forth. And who knows all of that stuff? Obama does. And Obama doesn't like Mike Flynn because he knows too much as well. He was the head of the intelligence during the Arab Spring. Guess how much information he knows? A lot, right? So this is why it was not something, this is why Obama keep on saying, we need to get him by the book 15 times. If you read emails from Susan Rice, she's a trophy as well, right? So Mike Flynn working for Trump, he had the baggage and he has enemies already, okay? And this is why he was the target and an easy target for Obama administration as well. For his credit, Flynn, as soon as he became in that position of an advisor, he he was not 100% assured that Trump is gonna win. Let's say that, right? So he started shutting down all of his operations and businesses, but at the same time have some keep going because he doesn't know, it might be just a small gig for a month or two and then it'll be over with, you know what I'm saying? And he was publishing a book and he was trying to go do other things and so forth and speaking and so forth. So he was not the best choice, I would say, but he was the choice. And he has baggage from both sides. And this is why you see he was targeted by Trump, by Obama administration very quickly and so forth. Make sense? We're following with me? Okay. I just want to finish one thing. So he is a victim, 100%, of the FBI and what they have done to him. But the real hero is not him. The hero is the Trump administration and Trump. They were not going after him because of him is a good man. It is actually because of the agenda of Trump and so forth. Make sense? So we need to understand that, God bless him. I wish him well. I wish him to get out of all of this. I'm not saying anything bad about him. All of this is good information that we need to know, and we need to understand what we are dealing with. But we have to understand that we should not, we should point who is going to be the real hero and not the one. Make sense? You have any questions so I can move forward? Go ahead.
Trump is a hero.
Well,
I mean, the Trump administration, not Flynn.
I'm a 501c3, so I cannot say Trump is a hero or not, and I cannot boost one person over another. But the reality is, I talked earlier about two different views of the future of America and the world. And I am pro-America, even though I'm 501c3, I'm pro-America. So America is not running for election. There's some others. So I am not with the agenda of pushing Islamists. I'm not an agenda for socialism. Because I'm going to tell you this. I lived as an Islamist myself, okay? I was an Islamist. I was not a terrorist, but I was an Islamist. I lived under socialism myself. I understand what dictatorship looks like. I know what censorship looks like. I know that healthcare governed by government looks like. I know all the socialist agendas, not by reading about them, but living them to the core. And they are horrific. I do not wish them on anybody. And definitely, I don't want to wish them on my kid. And I don't want to wish them on any American. And I don't want to wish it on the United States of America for one reason. America is the beacon of freedom and the beacon of good in the world. Many of those nations, many of those dictators are killing less, even though they are killers. They are killing less because of the fear of the United States. If the United States is gone or become leveled like other nations, the dictators will become more dictatorship, and the death will be more, the bloodshed will be more. I'm not talking about policy of policing the world, but this is the facts and the reality. I understand. I was very close to Egypt government. I know how much fear Mubarak was, and the Egyptian government from the United States, and how they have to cover their stuff that they do. I should not use the bad word. Cover their stuff so the United States would not criticize them or embarrass the United States. I understand what the United States has to provide because I was on the other side. You know what I'm saying? So, you have questions?
I'm curious. I don't know that we've talked about COVID-19 yet. This question is just about that. It's about, does blood type have anything to do with whether or not one has a bad reaction to COVID-19? I've heard it said
I
that.
can talk about the COVID-19 and stuff like that, but any questions about Mike Flynn?
Go ahead. If you have any questions right now about Mike Flynn, go ahead.
There's one, but I think you answered.
Okay, go ahead.
Real clear, it seems clear to me that Mr. Trump is cleaning out a lot of the deep state.
Yes.
And why would it not be that Michael Flynn, having been around for so long, having relationships with all of those people, wouldn't he maybe possibly be part of the deep state also?
Mike Flynn himself? Mike Flynn being part of the deep state, that's your question? No, he's not. And I'm going to tell you why. You know, before the Obama's firing, he might be. He might be have been one of them, right? Because he was in, you know, working with Stapper and others as well. But because of Obama fired him, he has the best of intentions. When I talked to him, he was on fire. He was thinking things are going to be different. He was so happy with Trump. He was not 100% assured that he's going to win. And he told me this. Well, we don't know. Let's see if he's going to win. At that time, by the way, there was the terrorist attacks the terrorist attack that took place in Florida. And I was talking about how the FBI, for all things, I was asking about how the FBI, you know, interviewed the terrorists and did not do that. And he defended that. He defended the FBI at that time. I think if asking the same question today, he's going to have a different answer. But he defended the FBI that day, and he was having the best hopes of things to change. So whether he was going to be part of the deep state or not, you know, if Obama did not fire him, he might have been. He might be on the same page as Stapper. Any more questions about that?
What?
And I'm not trying to destroy the character of Mike Flynn whatsoever. I'm just telling you, you know, what we should expect and so forth. When I talked to Cindy Powell, for example, and discussed this, and she was just taking the case on, you know, Cindy Powell is the lawyer for, she is the lawyer of Mike Flynn that he's helping out. She understands all of that stuff. She knows that she's not defending Michael Flynn, but she's defending the United States and the integrity, because she has knows exactly, and we had this discussion. She had these books about, what's the name of the book? License to Lie. License to Lie. And, you know, at that time, I don't know if I got the book or not, but she was talking about, when I was with her, and she was talking about the book, she's talking about the FBI and what they are doing and so forth. And she is, you know, she knows, she had been an insider. She worked with multiple leaders of the FBI and so forth. She knows who is Mueller and so forth. So she is in the fight for the right reasons. She wants to get Flynn out, yes, but it is not Flynn that she's trying to clear. She only she wants to clear or the administration and everything else. And I'm going to tell you, she's the strongest woman, you know, other than Vicky. I cannot say anything, you know. She's a very strong, and she's very smart. She is very colorful in her language sometimes, and she's very interesting all around, you know. And I think Mueller and others fear her. I can tell you that.
Well, what you were just saying about, you know what Obama was trying to level our country down. But we are so important as a deterrent then, right? For Egypt and
for the whole world. Yes, and for the Russians and so forth. Yes.
Power
yes.
keeps them in line.
Can I take your question? Yes. Yes.
This is ahead of me, or ahead of it a little bit. Do you have a book coming out?
Yes, I do have a book coming out, and
you should also write a second book, Michael Flynn and the 48 Hours with the National Security Advisor.
You're gonna get me in trouble, aren't you? Huh? Okay, sounds good. Any more questions? He wants to get me in trouble. We are in the final stages of editing right now, and we hopefully sometime soon. I know it has been taking so long, and there was lots of problems in the way, but it's coming soon, really, at this time. So, yes, my friend over there, he's gone. There is lots of people on top of me to get that done. So, any questions from the?
There is about the Middle East, and it's more theological. So if you want to pass on it, you can before you go to COVID-19. Didn't the Lord promise that the Israelites, the land that the Islamic Dome of the Rock mosque sits on?
Did the distract it for a second because we are 7:10. We're gonna go to 7:15 and then we'll go off. Okay, so everybody can leave our respective time. Go ahead. Okay.
Did the Lord promise the Israelites the land that the Islamic Dome of the Rock mosque sits on?
Yes, take your money.
Yeah. You're good?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the question is, did God of the Bible, the true God, promised the land, the Dome of the Rock, and the Muslim nations are trying to take over to the Israelites, or did he promise it to the Muslims? Is that the right question, right? Yeah, promises Israelites. So 100% it promises to the Israelites. Here's how, Islam, when he came in, and Muhammad, when he came in, he tried to take ownership of all the prophets and all their prophecies at the same time. So even it is in the Quran, actually itself, in the Quran, which is the textbook of Islam, it says that God promised Abraham the land and promised, and all the promises, and also talks about Moses and the crossing of the Red Sea and going to the promised land, all of that stuff. Muhammad said, because all the prophets were Muslims, supposedly, and they are waiting for his coming. Now all the promises throughout history transcends to him and to his followers only. So he starts kind of stealing from the promises of other nations. So he thinks in his mind, the Muslims think in themselves, that right now the promise that was given, the promised land, is not the Israelites' promise anymore, it is them, because the Israelites did not believe in him. They say it's a very easy way for the Israelites to have the land. They become Muslims. This is what their opinion. If the Israelites become Muslims and then they stay in the land, then this is how the promise is supposed to be. It's a twist way, it's a stealing, it is twisting the promises of God. And this is why you have religions that many people try to say we have Islam and Christianity and Judaism on the same place because all of them coming from Abrahamic. Well, that is a very deceiving statement, because you have one person wants to take over everybody else, and they are not coming from the same place. It's the same like somebody has lots of counterfeit dollars and he says, you know what, he belongs to the bank because they have dollars too. Is that makes sense? If I have a bag full of counterfeit dollars, do I think I should go to the bank and put them in the bank because I have dollars and the banks have dollars? No, I am still a thief who are using, counterfeit promises to take over other promises. Make sense? So with that, I will end, and I will be able over here to take some more questions. I wanted to talk very quickly about a phone calls, a conference calls with officials from the White House and others who are trying to reopen America. And without talking about it, actually, Rob has his own clearance. So he sits on the conversations with me and he takes notes. And from now on, I will be sending emails. He actually very good in writing and helping me putting the notes in writing. And we're going to start sending emails out what is the recommendation and what you're supposed to do and so forth. And so Rob will helping and Vicky, and we get those messages to you on a regular basis. But it's a very interesting initiative that we are part of, and there is good things happening, and we will share with you through emails. Thank you very much. Thanks for people online, and we'll see you next month. Can you be brave again and come next month? Okay, thank you.
Please don't forget to follow us, to donate when you have a chance. We really appreciate all the support.
Thank you. Have a good, stay safe. Okay.